Okay. We'll just get into it. Welcome to the podcast, everybody. We're talking about Greased Lightning today from 1977 and starring Richard Pryor.
I feel like this movie is unfortunately named, and maybe it's partly their fault, but every time I see this movie, I think it's a musical because of the Greased Lightning song from Grease, the musical, which came out, I guess, in 71, but then the movie that everybody knows it through today doesn't come out until a year after this picture.
Yeah, and this movie is based off of the true story of Wendell Scott, the first black NASCAR race winner on the National Series level, at least. I believe he was the first licensed black driver. It took him a while to get that. And it's definitely loosely based.
Yeah.
And I don't think for the better. I think this movie is kind of sanitized in a lot of ways. It doesn't shy away from language because they're trying to make a point about racism. But this has got to be the most friendly racist I have ever seen in my life. What can I say?
Oh, I'm sure there's more. Wendell Scott raced in NASCAR various series in the 1950s up until 1973. And this movie tries to cover all of that, in addition to him getting back from World War II in the 40s. And it's a lot to take in an hour and a half. I criticized Last American Hero, the Junior Johnson movie, for cutting off abruptly. It wasn't really about Junior Johnson because the timeline doesn't work. But it feels like everything in that movie takes place over 1 year. And I don't believe you get the full understanding of a Junior Johnson type in that. Now, this movie tries to do, 30 or 40 years? And maybe 30. And it's just, I don't think it does it very well. Credit to everybody involved in this movie, but I'll just say that off the bat.
Yeah, and in real life, this would have spanned 51 through basically 73.
Well, the 40s, too. 1940s are there, too, back from the war.
In terms of just the racing part, that's really what I mean. They covered prior to that. But in terms of just the racing part, which is really what they condense, you're talking a 22-year period. They don't spell it out with those years. I'm not sure in their little world what year it is.
They expect you all to realize there's been a big time shift, but they don't want you to worry too much about it.
Yeah, and it's kind of an odd jump. It's one of those, the more you think about it, the more problems it is. It's like, did he not win a race his entire career? Why did they call this a rivalry if he's got no wins?
Well, that's the other thing. It's built. Are we going to talk about the whole Richard Petty stand-in again? Do you want to delve into those details?
I mean, we can a little bit. They don't use other real drivers in this one. It works in some ways because the stock footage works better, though I do think the climatic crash, I don't think they're using the right car number again. Just embarrassing. But
well, they don't have footage of it either. That crash at Talladega.
I just lost the number. Was it 34? What number was he?
34. And I always thought it looked very similar to Richard Petty's pre-STP sponsorship days. It was blue 34. It does.
Now, the car that flips in this movie, I'm pretty confident is the number 30.
But they do show the wreckage of the 34 being hauled back.
They do, but I do think the flipping of the car was not the 34. I'm sorry, that's just offensive to me. If you're going to make a big movie, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But it really looked like the number 30. And go find a number 34 and flip this sumbitch and get your footage. Well,
see,
it's like,
come on. Here's how my understanding of that Talladega crash. I guess it's the spring race at Talladega, 1973. We seem to keep going back to the 73 season or the 72. It was a massive pileup on the backstretch. There were probably like 55 cars or something in the race, something like that. And they all they formed a wall on the backstretch. And nobody really knows quite what started what. So who flipped? I don't know. But, it probably took out half the cars in the massive field or more. And Dave Marcus, see if I got him right, one of Wendell Scott's sons, I think he had two, he sees Dave Marcus come back into the pits after the crash. And he asked Dave Marcus about his dad, and Dave Marcus supposedly said, "I think your daddy's dead, son." Fortunately, he wasn't, but it was that kind of a bad deal. was how everything was jumbled up.
Yeah. And in the movie, he basically takes a year off from that crash, and then he comes back and he wins his final race. So they don't really specify
Which is
whether
ridiculous.
it's actually his final race.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. He did come back for one more race, though, when he had a respectable 12th place finish. So, yeah, I watched the ESPN documentary they did right around, I don't know what year it would have been. It would have been 2000s, maybe later 00s, in the double O's.
Yeah, Wendell Scott is kind of, in terms of NASCAR's publicity and PR over the years, there may not be a worse example of PR for them in like just a we have this one black driver who is actually, despite everything being against him, he has talent, he's competitive, he wins a race. I think it was in 1970. Is that right?
63.
And
yeah,
63.
I think it was in December at the Jacksonville, Florida Speedway, which is not a place I'm familiar with. I don't know if it was dirt or paved, probably dirt.
He won in Jacksonville. He passed Richard Petty with about 25 laps left, but he was not announced the winner at the time. Buck Baker was. They decided 2 hours later that Scott had not only won, but he lapped the field, I think, by 2 laps.
Yeah. Very common in those days.
Yeah, he gets the prize money, but they didn't give him a trophy. And they didn't get him a trophy until 2021, 58 years later. He'd been dead for 30 years at that point. How bad do you have to be not to fix that mistake within 58 years? You've had a long time to think about this, and it's not like there's been no publicity about it.
I'm surprised Buck Baker would have kept it. When they did the ESPN documentary, because of how confusing the running order would have been in those days, pit stops might take minutes, right? And kind of good luck guessing when cars are coming out of the pits, who's on which lap. It seems likely NASCAR knew, and they wanted to avoid a situation where a black man would kiss a white trophy girl. Now, the irony is Buck Baker's wife was his official scorer, and she knew when the race was over that Buck Baker wasn't the winner. And she supposedly went and told the track official, my husband didn't win that race. And that's where the whole story of the kissing goes. But Buck Baker stayed very active in auto racing for decades. He had a driving school where, Jeff Gordon came through that. He helped to introduce those guys to stock car racing. His son, Buddy Baker, famous, maybe a less successful driver, but fairly successful and a notable commentator. I never cared for Buddy Baker's commentating for the most part. What can I say? But, Buck Baker died in 2002. I'm surprised if even his wife would have known this is bogus. How does Buck Baker, what does he just hold on to the trophy himself? That's a weird story I'd like to know more about.
And I think I did see that ESPN documentary years and years ago, but I don't recall. I don't know that he kept the trophy or not. I don't know who had the trophy.
That's interesting.
That's embarrassing, right?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. No doubt about it. Saint ridiculous.
Yeah. And on the flip side, why wouldn't you use that in the movie? They kind of do, but they don't. It's this is not a movie where NASCAR is giving their stamp of approval. This is done around NASCAR. I don't know if they actually say the words NASCAR. They show Winston Cup a few times on logos, but it's almost like a documentary style where they're acknowledging that it's the Grand National, so to speak, but not the Winston Cup. It's not like they need a NASCAR stamp of approval to put this movie out in 1973, at which point they still had not, or 77, excuse me, at which point they still had not given this man a trophy.
Does the movie show 4 different racing events? How many events are shown other than not the stock footage montage? Do we get 4 of them? I'm
not entirely sure. I forget where he's from.
Danville, Virginia, right on the state line with North Carolina.
I remember, I think one was Middle Virginia, the Speedway. I don't know if that's a real place or not.
What in the world? Was that the paved track or the dirt track? Middle Virginia.
I think that was dirt track. I don't think the track that he won, but they didn't give him his trophy, and they're trying to mirror the real life Cup win. It wasn't a Cup track. I think it was a dirt race.
Yeah. And in the movie, his rival, Bo Wells, stands in for Buck Baker and or Richard Petty and or whatever you want to call that.
Yeah, he's got the SDP car, but he really doesn't resemble Petty at all. He's actually Wilson, by the way.
Oh, are you going to bring him up? I was wondering if you would have recognized Ed Hindman. So it's not a face you recognize, but it's a name you might.
It's a face you kind of recognize, even though you don't generally have seen all of it. He got done making his little black and white porno movies, and he was doing a real film here. Then later to be sanitized with Wilson off Home Improvement.
Boy, I didn't know that was something. That's why he hides his face on Home Improvement, because he had that kind of movie.
I haven't seen the movies, and they're really old, so I don't know what his participation level was, but there was that kind of style, so to speak. Saw that when I was looking at the movie.
They petty him up pretty badly near the end of that movie with the cowboy hat.
Yeah, but he's too bulky. Like, Richard Petty's a lanky dude.
Yeah, he smoked a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, he doesn't really pull off the look. Personality-wise, he doesn't really fit either. He's just the villain, and they try to make him come across like a bad guy. You can never really tell if he respects Wendell or not.
Yeah. He's just I think in real life, he would have been based on NASCAR Cup Series driver Jack Smith. That was not a name I remembered. I had to go look up. It's not easy to find a picture of him, but he competed a long time, about the same time as Wendell Scott, and had, I think he had most of his success in the 50s and 60s. At one point, he won a Most Popular Driver award, and he won 21 NASCAR Cup Series equivalent races. But despite that, he's not in the Hall of Fame, and I don't think he ever will be, because apparently he gave Wendell a hard time early on. Apparently, Wendell Scott flashed a gun at him in the car one time, just to give him a... So, I don't know if he was is he just an SOB, or is he a racist SOB? I don't know. You know, he might have just been that way to everybody and looking for anything he can to give somebody a hard time. Maybe he's more similar to Wendell's white buddy. You got the idea he was just an SOB to everybody early in the movie. He just didn't care.
Yeah, and his white buddy was made for the movie.
Yeah. Is he Jeff Bridges' brother, by the way? Bo Bridges?
I wondered who he was related to, because he looked really, really similar to a few people.
His name is Bridges. Yeah.
Small little NASCAR world. What can I say? And so that goes back to, is the Richard Petty stand-in supposed to be some racist guy? And that goes to the whole movie's based off, the white people don't want the black guy to be racing with them. The fans don't want to see the black guy win. They're intrigued by having a black guy in the race, and they sell extra tickets because they'll get diverse crowd, so to speak. But you got a lot of the N-word in this movie from a lot of different people, but it's almost like a joke the whole time, and it's not serious. And now Richard Pryor plays the movie pretty straight compared to anything else he does. But it's just like, you don't get the sense that they're about to go lynch this guy, or like you just know in real life he experienced a lot worse than what they're showing on the camera. So it's like, what is the movie really trying to accomplish? Yeah. And who's this movie for?
Richard Pryor fans.
In 1977, there wasn't a lot of black people watching NASCAR. I mean, in the 90s, I think it was like 8%. So I imagine in 77, it was like 1%. It'd been like Michael Jordan's parents. And then that's it. And so they're not going to go see the race. And then you got 1977 NASCAR fans. I don't think they're going to want to go see this movie and be called out for a racist system. But it's not even explicit enough to make the people that watch the movie feel bad. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it's like a neutered version of what he would have experienced in real life. So it's like, it's just not as interesting as the real story. So what's the point?
Well, I will say this too. Sometimes I like one half of a movie better than the others. And I like everything about the whole moonshine portion of the story. And I really like the first, the race they set him up in as a publicity stunt at the Danville Speedway. Oh, yeah. And Richard Pryor gives excellent performance. He's straddling the line between comedic and drama. But after that, it just seems like it becomes entirely about a whole bunch of races that are not really that interesting. And Richard Pryor loses some of his material that he can work with, because he's really just sitting inside a car the whole time for the rest of the movie.
I agree. The beginning with the moonshine, you have the middle where he gains the white friend. And then you have the ending where you have the time jump. He's got his injury. He needs to come back and race. It's his dream. His wife's on board with it at the end. And then he wins his last race, which didn't happen in real life. And I don't know. It's just, I don't dislike any of the movie, and if Wendell Scott didn't exist in real life, I'd probably enjoy the movie more in a
Yeah,
weird kind of way. But because I know it's not accurate in some of the ways where it would be beneficial to be accurate, both in terms of the movie and the story, it's just like I said, I don't get the point, and I don't. That's probably why I couldn't find any box office information on it.
I'm sure it bombed. I don't know how they promoted it. I did not find a vintage trailer. I found a more recent Warner Brothers trailer. I think Michael Bell narrated it, and they play it up more like a comedy with Richard Pryor as opposed to real life sports culture drama. I noticed Wendell Scott is listed as technical advisor on the film, but I don't know to what extent he actually has influence on anything. He can just recommend some story beats and they do whatever they want to with it.
Yeah, my understanding is he did some of the stunt driving.
So
for some of the scenes that Richard Pryor was in, but I get the feeling that he supported the movie. He didn't necessarily have a lot of say in the movie, and he didn't speak very much about the movie after it was over. Pretty quiet guy, it sounds like in real life. So I don't get the feeling he made a lot of money off of it either. So I don't know what they paid him, but I don't think it was much. And I don't know. It's just I like the movie, but I think it could have been a lot better. And I just don't really understand why they took the route they took. Like who made this movie and who was it for? Because I can't check any boxes here. This doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
And the real life story is much more interesting with Wendell Scott.
If NASCAR had been heavily involved in promoting this movie and they were using it as a whitewashing of their history, so to speak, then the finished product would make a lot more sense to me. But they weren't. Like, why sanitize this story? It makes it less interesting cinema. I don't know.
There's a weird narrative with the sheriff. So, on the one hand, I never really got the sense in the movie they were trying to play him as racist specifically. He was just trying to catch moonshiners, and Wendell was the most effective moonshiner. And then by the end of the movie, he's a politician. He's a sheriff running for mayor, and then he kind of becomes. He's got a scene where he doesn't interact with anybody, but it looks like he's trying to sponsor Wendell's car in the last race. And there's sort of that weird tension when he goes to Wendell's house. Yeah, he goes to his house and he wants a photo op with him for his mayoral campaign. I'm not quite sure what arc they were trying to communicate with all that.
So I got the feeling that the sheriff respected Wendell. And if he was racist, it was the sense of like, we got this one black guy and we got like the whole freaking white department that can't catch him. So it's like almost like it's embarrassing to the department. Right. Whether he believes it or not. I think he does respect Wendell and he says, do it by the book. You know, we're not going to fake it, so to speak.
He has a sense of shame when he walks in on him in the bathtub. Which
Yeah. Well, and then
I don't understand it.
You have the original mayor in the movie gets caught by the police department when they're chasing Wendell, and he's having relations with a black lady in his car.
Oh,
so you have this juxtaposition
that.
among the sheriff and the mayor who's not on the up and up. So then the sheriff's running for mayor, and it is almost like they're trying to move the culture forward, so to speak. Now we got a mayor who's more respectful. He wants to bring people together, and maybe he's saying the things he always thought. That now he can say it out loud. I don't know, but they're trying to portray progress, but it's kind of a cumbersome kind of way of getting there. I like the movie, but I don't know if I can give a real strong recommendation unless you're a Richard Pryor fan.
Even then, I'm sure you got better Richard Pryor movies. I'd put Superman 3 way above this.
Yeah, but if you ever wanted to see Richard Pryor in the redneck South playing a role that's not as interesting as the real character, this is the movie for you. What can we say?
I thought the funniest bit in the movie was when he fakes out the police, because they've been running shine, but they've sort of made their delivery, and don't remember if they dropped it off yet, but they were just kind of parked, and the police pull up, and he has to fake it by calling over to Pee-wee or whoever's riding with him. He's like, make like they're having a make-up. So, there's all your gay rumors with Richard Pryor right there, I guess. Stuff like that. But that's a good scene. They all comment on how ugly the lady looks. Another good bit, when the Danville track owner is trying to explain to him what all the racing flags mean.
Oh, yeah.
And they get to the checkered flag bit. That's good. Don't you worry about checkered flag.
Richard Pryor plays a good moron, or pretending to be a moron like he doesn't understand. Simpleton.
What about the restaurant scene? That was done pretty well, right? About the bring the plates back.
That was probably the best scene in the movie in terms of like, I think portraying how someone like Wendell would feel in that position.
Yeah, he won tickets to the restaurant.
Yeah, and then the restaurant doesn't know what to do with him. And you can tell that like some of them are just outright racist. Don't want him there. Some of the people are just uncomfortable with him being there, but they'd like to figure out a peaceful solution. And then some of them are just enjoying the show because you got this conflict. So I think it was a good scene. And then you had the token white guy kind of standing up for him, and I assume he returned the plate. But,
well, yeah, Bo Bridges there, not Bo Wells, but what's his name in the movie? Houston or something? The Bo Bridges character.
It's Hutch, I think.
Hutch. Oh, there you go. Hutch.
Yeah, Hutch.
Oh, Hutch. Then he has a good scene where he quits working for Bo Wells on the STP crew.
Yeah. Which they don't really show why he hates it. Is it because he's working hard?
No. Wendell's in his last race, presumably. Maybe he gets money. Maybe he does one more, but he is quitting a full-time gig here. But he was one of those take this job and shove it kind of guys.
Yeah, and then so going back to like just the nuts kind of history of this. So Wendell Scott actually got into the Hall of Fame in 2015 for NASCAR, and he still didn't give him his trophy for 6 more years. That's insane. He actually did have a pretty good career, especially considering the circumstances. Underfunded, obviously, but 495 races in the Cup Series, 147 top 10s though, and he did finish 6th in points one time, which is very impressive.
And remember, again, in the pre-modern era, the fields would have had over 50 cars on a tiny track, and you're going to have positions separated by several laps. So people attribute it to, even though his cars are not going to have the performance as a lot of the other ones, he has such a good mind for setting up his own car and working on his own car. I mean, he's pretty much his own owner and crew chief, and sometimes his own pit crew member. They're able to persevere where a lot of the other cars drop out of the race. That's a credit to the endurance that he was able to build his cars with on less than ideal equipment.
Yeah. Well, in the race he won, he won by 2 laps.
Right. He out-persevered him.
I feel like this movie got made by someone who was inspired by Wendell Scott, but they didn't know anything about racing. They didn't know anything about the audience of racing. They got in over their skis, so to speak. And they didn't probably accomplish any of the things that they really wanted to accomplish in making a movie. Other than Richard Pryor made a semi-serious movie. So he probably appreciated it. But I don't know. How are we going to rate this thing?
That's a good question. Loose lug nuts. That's what we got to do. How many loose lug nuts?
So is this you want 5 out of 5 or you want 0 out of 5 loose lug nuts? We can kind of flip the script here.
Let's just simplify it and say lug nuts, and we can vary our ratings on how tight each lug nut is.
Okay. So I will give Richard Pryor and the lady that plays his wife, who I think he ended up marrying in real life, Pam Grier. They at least went out.
Man, that happens a lot. All these people work on the racing movies together. They get together.
I will give him and Pam Grier 1 tight lug nut each. I like them. I think they do well. I will give the rest of the cast a half lug nut, a half tight lug nut, because I feel like they're sufficient but not great. So 2.5 for the casting. I'm going to deduct 4 lug nuts, though, for just all the things I've talked about in terms of just neutering the movie and the story. So at that point, we're at a negative 1.5 lug nuts. We got to get us back up to at least 0. Well, they're actually going to lose another lug nut for the guy who played Richard Petty. I want to give bonus points for him, but I hate how they portray Richard Petty. So he loses another point.
It's not Richard Petty, because it's not the 43 car, but it seems like they borrowed a lot of
STP.
Petty's historical cars to use. They repainted them all, but it looked like they just set them up on a track to go around and film footage on.
Yeah, they gave Wendell his color, and then they made SCP knockoffs for Richard. I don't know. It just something's missing there. So they're at that point. Where are we at? I've lost track. We're -2 lug nuts, I think. So I think they're at a point deficit. After this race, they're in the hole. They've been penalized for having too few of lug nuts.
They finished last, and they get a 25-point driver penalty.
I think this is the equivalent of they've exited Daytona and they're 50 points in the hole, and they're not going to have a positive points probably till the 6th or 7th race of the season because they just don't award them as quick as they used to. So I'm going to say not only do they not have a tight lug nut on the car, but they also are missing 3 lug nuts.
Okay, you done? Oh boy. I'm not gonna try to get that complicated. It feels like people trying to calculate fuel for green-white checkers, and then it's when they tell the driver 20 laps into the fuel run, I need you to start saving for me. And it's like, oh, okay. As I said, I liked the first half of this movie better than the second half. If they had kept that kind of tone and focus of the first half of the movie, and maybe they just could have built it up to something like the 1963 race in Jacksonville, but have done it with better quality than what they did here, I might have given the movie 3 tight lug nuts out of 5. But as it is, I give it 2 lug nuts out of 5. I think the 2 are at least tight, but this is the kind of setup where NASCAR would have told the car to come back in. If that, they would have seen the tire wobbling, they would have said, get that car back in the pit. They would have given them the black flag for not only are the other 3 lug nuts are very loose. In fact, they've fallen off. So it's only got 2 lug nuts on it. So black flag, go into the pits. As a guy talked to Richard Pryor, tried to explain the flags to him. 2 out of 5 lug nuts. Black flag. Doesn't quite make the cut.
No. Again, I think the problem with this movie is that if it wanted to be a serious movie, it's not serious enough. And if it wants to be funny, it's not trying hard enough.
It's not funny enough.
It's kind of in no man's land where it's almost like they think the source material is too important to make a comedy a la Blazing Saddles or something. Like whatever NASCAR Saddles would be. They're afraid to do it.
Talladega Nights, right? Yeah.
Yeah. You got any other thoughts on it?
Might have had more inward drops than the leprechaun in the hood, right?
All right, well, that has been the story of Wendell Scott, played by Richard Pryor in Greased Lightning from 1977, a NASCAR movie that's not really a NASCAR movie, but kind of is. And could have been better. Could have been worse, but could have been better.
Just so we throw it out there, do you think Last American Hero is the better movie between these two, ratings aside?
Yeah. This movie has better stock footage in a general sense of like the cars aren't changing sponsorships every race, but they didn't stick that landing. But I think the plot, they do a much better job in the other movie.
Well, that's probably fair.
I can't give this movie too many props. They took a really interesting story and they managed to make it less interesting.
That's true.
They had a feel-good ending for a story that wasn't a feel-good ending.
I think it was in real life. I think the 12th place finish in real life after what he went through actually is pretty cool and more believable. They build up his very first race as being important, just that he finishes. And I'd say that's what the last race would be too. It's more important at that point in your career just to finish than to go out in a blaze of glory, or go out in a blaze, as Richard Petty said. All right. So now we got to figure out what's next.
Yep. There's probably a good chance Burt Reynolds is in it.
Good chance.
Just from sheer statistics.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. That's been Greased Lightning.
And the checkered flag has waved.